Okay, in three, two, one. Hello, and welcome to Know the Score. I'm your host for this episode, Don Delarente. You can find me on Twitter at Don Delarente. I'm joined by Tyler Ball. What's going on, Tyler?
Hey, what's happening? You can catch me on Twitter at TABall1. For those of you who have already listened to our uh, podcast that was released on Wednesday, taking the knee, want to welcome back. But for those who haven't, please, please, please check out the taking the knee episode, which we aired this week, and some very poignant remarks on uh, just the peaceful, unified protests of the National Football League. So
You can
it's
find
a
that
show.
episode on our website at www.cspn.us. You can also find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play. We're also on Twitter. You can follow the show at KTS Pod. Well, Tyler, the end of this week on Saturday, it will be October 1st. Or yeah, yeah, Saturday, October 1st.
Yep.
So we all know what that means.
It's playoff time
Fall
on the
baseball
diamond.
time. Yep, that's right. So as the end of the season is wrapping up, we have most of our playoff matchups in place as we have just a couple of one more division that needs to be clinched and one more wild card that needs to be clinched, and everything will be, set in motion. So what we do know for sure is that on Tuesday, October 3rd, the Twins and the Yankees will be facing off in the wild card game, the basically one game playoff to see who advances to play the Cleveland Indians starting that Thursday. Now, we'll start with the AL first. I'm not really a big fan of the one game just because like baseball is about a series and I would rather them play like three games, like, one home, and then if they need the third game. But since we only have one game, this is going to be very interesting because I think that the Twins have enough good pitching that they can maybe keep the Yankees' bats down, but they're playing in Yankee Stadium, and the Yankees have had a great home record this year. I'm really up in there. This is a real toss up for me. I don't know. It's just going to depend on who's starting for which team. If they can get one of their top two guys on the bump, then versus maybe the third or fourth guy for the other team, that might be the actual advantage that lies within whoever's going to win, just who has a better starting pitcher for that game.
To be honest, I don't think it's necessarily the starting pitcher that has all the pressure. I think if you do this by committee, you go on Tuesday, and then you play in theory on Thursday, but you've got to win Tuesday. So I say you pitch by committee and treat it like an all-star game. Put your Even if you have to limit your pitch counts, I say get the 27 outs that you need and win the game. That's the most important thing. You got to at least get 27. And I say if you start to get in trouble and you've got to pick your matchup, don't stay with your pitcher too long.
Right,
Get him out.
right.
Get him
Well,
out.
that's the key to all playoff baseball is to limit the damage once your pitching starts taking a beating. The next matchup is tentatively set for Wednesday, the 4th. The teams are still not decided yet, but we know the Rockies for sure. And at the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks are in. The Rockies are still yet to clinch. They have to win one more game, and they will be in the National League wildcard game. Um, the advantage here goes to the Diamondbacks, even though the Rockies have gotten much better on the road this year. It's the Diamondbacks having that home field advantage, the Rockies not being able to use the light air to help their potent lineup. I think I'm gonna have to go with the Diamondbacks on this one. I think they'll be able to have enough pitching and enough defense to win a 3 to 4 game, 2 to 3 type game.
The Diamondbacks have a more balanced lineup. I like Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt, to me, if I had to choose, would be he would be my MVP by a hair over Arenado. But um, I think the difference is going to be Fernando Rodney. I think that um, Rodney is pitching extremely well right now, and I just think that you have such a great advantage with Rodney in there and him, and you can be sure that if they get a lead, I think I can actually trust the Diamond bullpen more than I would Colorado's.
Okay. All right. Now that will take us to Friday. Once we get those matchup sets, we find out who wins the wild cards, and those two teams will. The AL winner will have to go play Cleveland, who is the number one seed, and the National League winner will have to go play the Dodgers. Now the other two series that we know we're going to get that are set in stone for sure, going to be on Friday. They're the Red Sox and the Astros. Astros, up until Cleveland just went historic, have been the best team in the league. Altuve, suffered an injury, so they kind of, hit the skids here a little bit, second half, and they haven't been as hot. But it seems like they got Verlander. They traded for him. He's won his first 5 starts. He was very impressive in his last start with 11 strikeouts. He seems to be rejuvenated. So this is going to be a really fun matchup. The Red Sox lineup is really fun to watch. Their outfield super fast. They don't really, give up a lot of. Their defense is really good. They don't give up a lot of extra runs. They're, one of the most patient teams at the plate, so they try to burn through your pitching. Do you have a read on kind of Red Sox Astros? Who do you think is going to be the team to move on to the American League Championship Series?
I'm gonna take the Astros. I just think from top to bottom, the Astros are just loaded. Um, and of course, Altuve starts it off. He's probably going to be the AL MVP, um, just because his consistency, and he's just one. I think he's actually one of the toughest outs over the past 5 years. Um, but my key here is defense. I trust the I trust the Astros defense more than I trust the Red Sox. And considering where they're going to play, you have to think that Boston relies on a little bit more power. Um, and even though Boston probably has the better bullpen, I like the Astros' balance of bats from top to bottom. I know that the Astros are confident that they can generate runs from the bottom of the order, and I'm not sure uh, if Boston's confident enough. As a matter of fact, interestingly enough, they're playing right now, um, and of course the Astros are up 5-0, in what could be a preview. So it's just interesting to see what the Astros are going to try to do.
Right.
Um, but I think you look at Springer, look at Altuve. Um, you got power at decent spots. Uh, Ian Maben, Gonzalez, and of course Gonzalez hitting sixth. I really really like their squad, and of course Correa hitting cleanup. I mean, you can generate runs from all over the lineup, and that's why I think it's better off to go with these guys.
All right. And on Saturday, over in the National League, this is going to be a very fun series. We got the Cubs, who are probably the hottest team in the National League right now. So they've had a great second half. They buried themselves, had a little bit of a World Series hangover first half of the season. Got to the All Star break, they kind of regrouped and took over the National League Central, and they will be going up against a team that's been coasting pretty much all season, getting ready to get to this point, and that would be the Washington Nationals. Now the Nationals are getting Bryce Harper back in the fold. He just returned a couple of nights ago, trying to get some at bats, coming off a bruised knee, a calf strain where he slipped on the base, first base, trying to run a ball out about a month and a half ago. So, he's trying to work his way back into shape. This is going to be such a fun series. The Nationals clearly have the better starting pitching, um, at least the top two. But after you get past that, the Cubs probably have the advantage in the lower part of the pitching order.
Mhm.
I think the Nationals have had a bugaboo all season, and it's their bullpen. And the Cubs have kind of solidified their bullpen. So I think the Cubs may be primed for an upset here. I know the Nationals will probably come in being the favorite, since they're the second best team in the National League. But I think the Cubs are just so hot, and they've got that World Series pedigree, that playoff experience of we know what it takes, and the kind of focus and the kind of fun that they need to have to play with. So I think the Cubs will make a run back to the NLCS.
Um, I think the key to the Cubs is figuring out the rotation. Uh, what do you do? Do you go Lester and Arietta? Uh, Lester pretty much pitches well everywhere. He's got a pretty solid ERA against the Nationals, even in Nationals Park, uh, which is just about right at 3 runs. He has a 3-run ERA, so that's not bad at all. Um, but Arietta is right there. He's at 3.13. Um, so your top two starters are going to be there, and of course the uh, the Nationals tend to hit lefties about as well as they do righties. So I think that the decisions to go with um, your best squad is probably better than just who's hot right now. Like actually the bottom of the pitching rotation has been carrying the Cubs lately with Kyle Hendricks and Jose Quintana, but these guys aren't. These guys haven't been consistent against the Nationals, and Quintana's never faced the Nationals, and he's also never pitched in the playoffs. So you know, could be a matchup issue there. It's never great for a offense to see a pitcher that they haven't faced before. But he's going to be your game 4 starter. So it should be interesting. But Joe Madden's got some work to do to figure out how to get this starting rotation right for the Cubs, and they're just hoping that the bats can get around and get a few runs on the board against the national starters.
Yeah, I think especially for those first two games, what the Cubs' best game plan would be is to try to get the pitch counts up of the starters and try to get them out because in these short series like this, you may be able to extend the series out and catch one of those guys having to come back on a short rest. And if you can, the more pitches you can get them to waste in game one, the weaker they'll be if they have to come back for a game five. So, um, I, like I said, this is just going to be a lot of fun. I just think the Cubs, I just they've been so hot. They've had so many playoff type games here in the last month. Trying to hold off the Brewers and the Cardinals for trying to make a late charge there too. So I just think they've been in playoff mode probably more than any team that is actually going into the playoffs on either side, American League or National League. So, um, and then Cubs Dodgers again in the NLCS would really be a lot of fun. Um, the rematch, see if Clayton Kershaw can redeem himself in the NLCS this year. And then I think a lot of people would probably like to see Cleveland and the Astros go at it in the American League Championship Series, but the Yankees are such a wild card. If the Yankees can win and beat the Twins, the way that they can hit the ball is very scary because if they can just get guys on base, they got two or three guys, four guys who can put the game, ball over the fence and erase a 3-run deficit, with one swing. So it would be very interesting if that came down to, that game. It got extended and the Yankees pitching and bullpen, taxed Cleveland and extended them out. Um, Cleveland versus the Astros, though, I think that's what everybody would kind of figure would be the World Series matchup. Like whoever won between those two teams would probably be the favorite going into the World Series, even if it was the Dodgers that made it through.
Yeah, definitely. The Dodgers right now just aren't. Yeah, they're a mixed bag. I don't know if you can trust them right now. Uh, that's unreal. How they got the amazing start has almost been neutralized by this just staggering finish by early season standards. So
Yeah,
of
the
course the Dodgers have the pitching.
right.
So now it's just will the bats catch up?
They really stepped up a lot when Kershaw was out. A lot of their run was when he was hurt with his back injury, and then once he kind of came back and they started working him back in, and they traded for you Darvish, is kind of when they started, kind of like you said, kind of stalling around, stumbling around here, playing, under 500 baseball for most of the second half. So, um, maybe they're just another team that's kind of just waiting to get to the finish line and get a couple of days off and recharge and get focused for playoffs and start that second season. Once you get out to such a big lead and win so many games, it's got to be kind of hard to keep your focus. When you're so far ahead and there's nobody that's gonna be able to catch you from behind. So we'll see how that shifts, if their focus shifts once the playoffs start. Well, with the end of the regular season, of course, comes the talk of, postseason awards, MVPs, and um, Cy Young Award winners. So in the National League, probably the top three guys that'll be in the running will be Nolan Arenado of the Colorado Rockies, Paul Goldschmidt of the Diamondbacks, and Giancarlo Stanton of the Marlins. We'll start with Stanton. He probably will fall just short this year unless he has, one of these homer and bunches stretches to kind of close out the season. I think he's at 57 right now. Um, he's got the big home run numbers, but of course, with a big slugger like that, the contact is not always at a premium. So his batting average is really low. He's got good RBIs. He'll probably be second, I think, or maybe probably third in the running when they actually
Yeah, he'll
vote.
finish third.
But he's definitely brought a lot of interest back to um, the Marlins at least this season in the home run chase with what people are feeling pretty confident to say is a non-aided run at 60 homers.
I also let's add another thing too. Not only is the interest there, but now with the sale of the Marlins complete to the group that one of the members is Derek Jeter, one of the investors. Now you got a question of what to do with him for next year. Uh do you try to trade him and
Nah,
prospects, or do you hold them to the deadline and see what's out there next year?
if I'm the Marlins, you got to have somebody to sell the park. If you're coming in as new ownership, he's under the contract. He just signed the big contract 2 years ago, the 10-year contract. You've got him wrapped up. He's really starting to kind of hit the prime of his career. He's cut down on strikeouts a lot this year. That's a lot for him,
Mm-hmm.
from where he was. He seems, to be kind of getting more mature in his plate appearances. So I think that if you're investing in this group and you're coming in to buy the Marlins, you got to have an attraction, and he is definitely it. Um, you got to have somebody to put, to sell the tickets, and that's what they're definitely going to need in this first season under new management. So yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's entrenched. He's probably going to be a Marlin for um, till he turns late in his 30s, probably 36, 37. They might decide to kind of move away from him then. But for the next 4 or 5 seasons, yeah, he's got to be on that team to get them, you know, to where they want to be. Um, the probably number one person here is going to be Nolan Arenado. Followed up last season with another great season. He's got 35 homers currently, 126 RBIs. Goldschmidt has 36 homers, 120 RBIs. They're both playing out west. They may be able to kind of decide who wins it amongst themselves when they play in this one game wild card game if it shakes out that these two teams play each other. Who do you feel has a better track to get the MVP? You think? I know you are really in love with Goldschmidt. I know that you've been touting him since we had our preview.
Um, you know, it's literally a photo finish at this point. I mean, um, you really have to literally go through a microscope to find something that Arenado stands out in. Um, technically, Arenado has more hits and total bases. Um, I mean, they're practically, uh, yeah, they're practically equal. But here is something that does matter. How are you literally when your team is competing for a playoff spot, and both of them are, but here's the difference. Arenado was a bit better. Um, he was way better in OPS. He's also um, a much better defender in the infield. Actually, he's arguably a gold. He's arguably going to win the Gold Glove. Um, he also has produced a little bit more with runners in scoring position. I mean, he's only second to Daniel Murphy in the league, and he also leads in OPS with runners in scoring position, which is incredible. Um, the highest number he's got the highest number as far as OPS with runners in scoring position since Miguel Cabrera's triple crown season in 2013, which is nuts. Also, I think also you can determine that the fact that he's hit more homers, pretty that's a pretty solid reason too, because that means you're focused, and it also doesn't really matter when you show up. You're going to be because you're going to be an equal threat. Most of your top players are much better at home versus on the road, but if you've got to split hairs, which you are with Goldschmidt and Arenado, you've got to consider the fact that Arenado's defensive efficiency could be the very very well difference. I think it's going to be a minimum number of first place votes that decide the difference, and I think Arenado gets those few extra first place votes.
All right. Now we'll shift over to the American League, where we've got Jose Ramirez of the Indians, we've got Jose Altuve of the Astros, and Aaron Judge of the Yankees. Now we'll start with Jose Ramirez, of course. He's got 50 doubles, 30 homers, 15 stolen bases, and he scored 100 runs. That is amazing to have those type of power numbers from a middle infielder, especially the to have that many doubles and that many homers. Slugging percentage is just ridiculous. Um, and he's currently playing on the best team in the league. So, he might have the inside track. Usually, best team, best player, usually how the MVP works in most sports. But we'll see. Just your thoughts on Jose Ramirez before we talk about Altuve and then, Judge.
Best player on the best team usually gets a lot of pub, but in baseball, it's been more leaning towards the individual who has the best numbers. Um, Usually, you'd like to see the best player be rewarded, but not just because he's on a good team. Well, typically in other sports, but in baseball, it's more prevalent because teams can pitch around you. So if they don't think that you're you know if that means the fact that you're putting up numbers and you're a known commodity, that means you also have pretty good teammates too, because you're getting pitches to hit. Um, the ones that he's hitting, he's done pretty well. Altuve is just um between him and Judge is that Judge is one of those guys that he can change the game with a swing of the bat, and it's always sexy. Your big power home run hitter as an MVP candidate. Um, I These two different types of players are going to push Ramirez down to third, just because their numbers are a little bit more eye popping, especially Altuve's Ramirez.
Right. I think Altuve has been, this has kind of been maybe like 2 years in the making, this season that he's had right here. If you've been watching the Astros closely, in the bleachers, split up to Michael Felder. He's a huge Astros fan. So every time, they're on or we go back and forth, we talk. And basically, I've been telling me and him going back and forth, going, yeah, 2017, they'll probably be their year. They got really close last year, ran out of gas at the end, missed the playoffs. But they came back this year and were really strong straight out of the beginning. And Altuve is definitely the major cog in that. The Yankees' resurgence this year, they're a year ahead of schedule, and that's definitely based on Aaron Judge's breakout season. He started the season just amazingly. Of course, the pitching caught up to him. He had a little swoon there, and now he had a rough stretch where he was like striking out every time he got up there to the plate. He had like 50 strikeouts in a row, it seemed like. Uh, got a couple of days off to kind of clear his head, and things got back right, and he's finished really strong for a rookie. Yeah, I think he'll have plenty of chances to put together an MVP season. But to finish third or second as a rookie, that would be very impressive.
Being a rookie here, and you just brought this up, I think being a rookie kind of hurts him here too, because it's you have to have this also tells me quietly how good Mike Trout was his rookie year to uh to be a bona fide MVP candidate. He's really great. And Chris Bryant last year, um, you know, just could really hit the baseball. Altuve does it all. Altuve hits for average. Altuve hits for power. He can he can hit for power. He can eat up bases. Let's add that he's got 32 steals along with 555 slugging percentage. And that's only Trout, A Rod, Ricky Henderson, Jose Canseco, and Paul Molitor have done that. That's it in 94 years of baseball, which is nuts. Um, Not to mention Altuve is a solid fielder as well, and he's like that his consistency uh against all pitching. He's situationally much better than Judge. I think that gives him the nod barely his share of MVP votes, but I think Altuve does a little bit more, and he's a little more effective overall than Judge, just sitting there waiting for the perfect pitch to take over the fence.
All right. All right. Now we'll move over to the pitching award, the Cy Young in the National League. Probably just going to be the top three. Kenley Jansen maybe has an outside chance, but relievers don't get any love in the Cy Young voting typically. So we've got Clayton Kershaw from the Dodgers, Max Scherzer from the Nationals, and also Steven Strasburg from the Nationals. Kershaw did a lot of his heavy lifting early in the season. Of course, he missed a big part of the season when he was out in the DL with this back injury. Max Scherzer has been pretty consistent for the Nationals. He did have a little rough stretch there where maybe his pitch count and Dusty Baker's management of him cost him a game or two here. And Strasburg has been lights out since he came back from his annual trip to the DL. I think he had at one point had 11 wins in a row and had a ridiculous almost 50 inning scoreless streak going for the Nationals. So out of those three, who do you think is the best candidate for this year's Cy Young?
Got to go with Kershaw. Let's be real out here. Even though the purest numbers, you know, he doesn't give up a lot of hits. He pitches deep into games, and he strikes out a lot of guys. But Kershaw, better situation. He's a better situational pitcher, and he's probably the better big game pitcher. Games against consistently. He's done that. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean he's doing that. He'll do that in the playoffs, which has been the real problem. But uh, Kershaw managed to have a better winning percentage and a better pitching record against winning teams than Scherzer, which says a lot. I mean, I know he didn't get as many starts, um, as injuries, but at the same time, I mean, he's performed and he's been extremely dominant. The main reason why the Dodgers got off to the rocket start that they did. Um, they went out, they were a different team. They lost 10 in a row. While he was out, and still good. They're still a good team without him. They're just not the same. They're not dominant, and there's no way they win without him. So I think when you add that and how different how dependent they are on him, a pretty solid starting rotation with Kershaw.
For people who are super duper analytic baseball nerds, the one thing that might get Kershaw this Cy Young is his WAR. Is because the people who have replaced him have definitely not been as good as he has, and so that is kind of like an actual value to how valuable you are. So I
Yeah,
think that
it's
that
literally one of the best stats in baseball, to be honest.
right. So I think that actually might tip the scales over into Kershaw's favor, even though due to him missing that significant amount of time, he's dwarfed in all the actual numbers. If you look at the strikeouts and the hits giving up and the ERAs and all that stuff, Serger has all the statistical stuff, but um, like you said, just how much he's meant to the Dodgers definitely would make him the most valuable pitcher, which that award is definitely for. And move over to the American League, the Cy Young. It's a two-horse race. If you got Corey Kubler coming off of last year, proving that it wasn't a fluke, doing it again, and then Chris Sale, who moved over from the White Sox to the Red Sox this year and was, very instrumental in them regaining their perks back atop the American League East this year. Um, I really like Chris Sale. I like how he is one of these, throw it by you type of pitchers. He's up there to intimidate you and strike you out. Corey Kubler is more of a working man's pitcher. I call him. He moves the ball in and out, up and down, keeps you off balance. Really a great contrast. Either one of these guys could really win it to me. I don't see a clear cut distinction between either of them. Maybe Kubler just because the Indians just went on that ridiculous streak and they had like I think 26 wins. I think they had like 6 or 7 shutouts in that time, where their pitching was just really 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 lights out. Um, what is your take on Corey Kubler versus Chris Sale?
Kuba's the best. It's not even. I don't even have to go into analytics. It's an eye test for me. Kluber's the best. I mean, he should be the MVP. I mean, he should be the Cy Young winner. Just dominant, uh, better uh, overall numbers. Uh, I don't even have to get into analytics. I think he's just got a better. He's got better pitches. He's got more dominant pitches, and I just think that he has really propelled the Indians when he's out on the bump. I mean, just it's really not complex to me at all. I just think he's just uh, I think he has uh, just much more. He's actually much more consistent than Sale. Sale props to Sale because Sales had a rocky he had a rocky start, of course, in the preseason when he got moved over. Um, and he's been a rock for the Sox, but Kluber's just dominant. Um, Actually, is just pretty much Cooper reminds me of how good Kershaw was last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and he's and on top of that, Sale may have the most strikeouts and he's got the nice ratio, but and of course because Kluber plays in Cleveland, uh, so that's going to be a dominant. Actually, it's a mismatch. Uh, Posted a 14.63 ERA in 2 starts against Cleveland. so, so yeah, that may be a telltale stat when you put them up head to head. 14.63 ERA against Cleveland and 2.34 against the rest of baseball. So, yeah, that 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 might be it. But to me, eye test wise, Kluber's the best pitcher in baseball right now, even better than Kershaw to me.
All right. Now we'll just get into the last award that will be given out, which will be Rookie of the Year. These will probably be unanimous in both divisions, as Cody Bellinger of the Dodgers come in swinging a big stick. I think he had 39 homers this year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
A judge in the American League who just set the rookie record with 50, breaking Mark McGwire's record from back in the day. So those will be probably unanimous choices for Rookie of the Year in the
Yeah.
NL and AL.
I mean, Judge is a no brainer. I mean, we just discussed him being an MVP candidate, so yeah, he's got to be the rookie of the year.
Right. Just a reminder that this is Know the Score. We're brought to you by CSPN.us. You can find us on CSPN.us. You can also find us again on SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and iTunes. So download, subscribe, rate, and review. Now we're going to shift over to the NFL, Week 4. Going to preview 4 games here. We're going to start off with the Titans and the Texans to take control of the NFC South. The Titans coming off a very impressive win against the Seattle Seahawks. They got a bunch of big plays, long run from DeMarco Murray. Rashard Mitchell got a long touchdown pass and run. They made a lot of big plays on defense. They kept Seattle pretty much contained. Russell Wilson, kept the game close, but fourth quarter got a little bit out of hand. They got enough separation and had an impressive victory. The Texans, Deshaun Watson, second start, looked a little bit better against the Patriots. Basically, the Patriots were on the ropes. They had them on the ropes. Deshaun Watson was a big reason why. Their defense let them down, which is a little bit surprising to me because that's really been the strength of their team the last 4 or 5 years is that defense and being able to make plays to preserve their wins. So, Deshaun Watson looks a lot more comfortable in the second week. His numbers were pretty decent going up against Bill Belichick. He had 2 touchdown passes, he had 2 interceptions. Um, so this will be another challenge for him. He's going up against Dick LeBeau and the tough, very tough Titans defense, especially when it comes to running the ball. The Texans are kind of doing running back by committee right now, so their running game isn't as strong as it has been in the past. Um, it looks like a game the Texans are playing at home, but it looks like a game that the Titans have a lot of the advantages. Just because they have the better running game, they have the better defensive line, they probably have the better offensive line as well. So it looks like a game that the Titans should come out on top of just because of those factors. And you never know what you're going to get week to week from a rookie quarterback. But Tyler, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Um, I think that the way to beat an aggressive defense is to pound them with the running game. And the Titans have one of the best running games in football when you pair up um, DeMarco Murray with rookie Derrick Henry, which also sets up play action. You could throw the ball to guys like Rashard Matthews plays. You got Jonnu Smith, who's emerging at tight end. He could be the next great franchise tight end, following the likes of Frank Wycheck. Um, I like the Titans defense as well. They're playing pretty well. Um, Kick returner and corner, Adoree Jackson, who's he's got definitely a lot of potential. He actually had a punt return called back because of a clip, but he showed off a lot of speed. Um, have one of the best sets of special teams in football. Ryan Suckup has only missed one kick so far out of 11, and that was well beyond 50. So I really like the Titans in this. Pressure Watson in the turnovers. He's actually he's susceptible to that. When you have a rookie quarterback, that's what you're going to deal with. Um, he, there's a lot of pressure on the Texans because you don't want to go to 1-3, especially in their division. However, the Titans are simply just more talented on the field. So,
All right. Our next matchup, we're going to move over to the AFC West as the Oakland Raiders are going up against the Denver Broncos. Both teams coming off losses. Very surprising losses actually for Denver. I didn't think that they would go and get handled the way they did after at Buffalo after they just dominated the Cowboys a week ago. And then the Raiders came into DC this past Sunday and got completely shut down uh, by the Washington football team's defense. They got 10 points based on a muff punt and a fumble. Other than that, they might have got shut out. They didn't cross over the 100 yards of total offense until it was like 4 or 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I mean, it was a eye popping, jaw dropping display. I don't know if the Redskins were that good or were the Raiders just that bad or what make of it. So this is going to be a little bit harder game to handicap. Um, now looking at this with these two teams doing, come up to loss. Um, I really like Trevor Simeon, so I don't know if he's really the lesser of the two quarterbacks here. Derek Carr is my quarterback man crush. If I could have any quarterback on my team, it would be him. So, um, I probably have to go with the Broncos just based on the strength of their defense. Their secondary seems to be, is a little bit tighter. than the Raiders are. Emerson is still very susceptible to getting beat over the top. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna have to go with the Broncos on this one. I think if they can do like the Washington football team did and kind of just stay consistent with their run, and young Trev make the throws he's got to on third down and protect the ball in the red zone. I think they can squeak it out.
Of course, Emerson, a product of Greensboro, North Carolina Dudley High School. Come on, man. Got help me out here. Help me out. But the real issue that the Washington exposed with the Raiders was getting a ton of mismatches with the running backs. Um, the passing game. Chris Thompson had 188 yards combined on 14 touches as they isolated him with linebackers and safeties as a receiver. Now, CJ Anderson may not be that guy, but here's a chance to reintroduce Jamal Charles, who's been a Raider killer. Um, I would expect to see some throws to him. Maybe give him about 7 or 8 touches to see what he can do. But I just think you pound at the Raiders with C.J. Anderson and make the defense have to bring up the linebacker and the safety, and then you can throw the ball past them with your two guys outside in Denarius Thomas and
Emmanuel Sanders.
so you go
Sure.
yeah so you get a lot of play action, get isolated with force Mac to make a decision. Um, unfortunately for Simeon, Mac is actually sackers in the league, and of course, um, having faced Demarcus Lawrence, who leads the league in sacks with the Dallas Cowboys, and Melvin Ingram, who has kind of had who did pretty well against them, and now you got Mac. Broncos are giving up 3 sacks a game, so Simeon's going to get some pressure. With all the more reason why we go back to step one: run the football
Hmm.
or get the ball to the running backs in space. Uh, just uh, Charles actually did very well last week. He's back um, against the Bills, but the Raiders also allow about 113 yards a game on the ground. So Broncos got quite a few advantages here. So
Hmm.
it's as long as they do not turn over the ball, which they've had a bad habit of doing, um, especially last week, penalties too. Um, they can take advantage of the Raiders defense, which is ranked 26th overall.
Right. Right. We're moving to the Monday night football matchup as my Washington football team travels into Arrowhead Stadium to play the Kansas City Chiefs. This is going to be a very, very tough environment for the Washington football team to go into and win. The Chiefs are absolutely rolling. They got the number one rushing offense in the league right now. They're making big plays. Yeah, 69-yard touchdown run from Kareem Hunt last week, to go along with the 50-yard touchdown pass from from Alex Smith to Tyreek Hill. They're really clicking on all cylinders. They've been able to get up on teams, which has been able to have the pass rush unleashed. So their defense is really, looking good. Even though they are a little weak against the run, the games haven't really been close enough where teams can stay with it. They have to abandon the run early and go with their passing game. So that allows Justin Houston to go out there and hunt and do what he does best, which is put your quarterback down on the ground. Um, as far as the other way, them defending the Washington football team, again, like you were saying earlier, the emergence of Chris Thompson has been a revelation. He's the Washington football team's third down back. He's been instrumental in all the big plays so far that we've had. I think he's actually scored like all but like one or two of the touchdowns for the season so far. Um, the defense, if they can show another game like they did last week against the Raiders, against a team with a proven offense and a proven coach, proven offensive minded coach, this will definitely go a long way. And the Washington football team really proving themselves to be much better than just a 9-7, 8-8, 6-10 type team that I kind of thought they would be looking at their schedule going in. The improved defense and the improved commitment by Jay Gruden to stick with this running game, take a little bit pressure off of Kirk Cousins, make it a little bit easier for him, has really done wonders the last two games against two teams with some pretty good defensive lines. The Rams, they got Aaron Donald back in his first game. He might not have been at his best, but his Robert Quinn was still there, and the other guys were on that line. And then the Raiders last week. So very encouraged by what I saw from my team. Just hopefully they can be consistent and just go out here and make it a tough game, make it tough on the Chiefs. Just don't get blown out. And I think that it'll do a lot for them, win or lose this game.
What has gotten into the Chiefs? Uh, all of a sudden, play machine. They're like the Raiders with the vertical game. What in the world? 4 touchdowns between 30 and 75 yards. This game has the potential to be a shootout. Um, Chiefs are third in the league, averaging almost 400 a game, 400 yards a game, and Washington is eighth at about 373. Uh, the Chiefs have gotten leads on teams and have forced uh the football so they can come back. The Chiefs actually have defensive backs that can make plays. So I'm not sure if that's the best strategy, especially when it's early in the game. Um, I think you want to uh, test the Chiefs defense in the run game before you try to throw all over the field against them, particularly on the outside. And Washington doesn't necessarily have guys um, who can go deep per se, but if Kirk Cousins can hit those intermediate passes and they can get some running game going with some play action and get some guys in space. Um, they can move the ball against the Chiefs. Now on the other end, it's all about Tyreek Hill. Somebody's got to match up with him. If he gets open, it's going to be a while before you actually can bring him down because you do not want to chase one of the fastest guys, if not the fastest guy in the NFL, in the open field. So, but what we're discovering is that Hill isn't the only weapon. Rookie running back Kareem Hunt is already making a case for Rookie of the Year as he tends to turn in. It seems like he turns in a 30 yard plus play every game. So impressive, probably been the pleasant surprise of the year so far. Uh, he excels in between the tackles, and if he can make a guy miss too. So the key is you got to control him. If you're Washington, you've got to keep them under control and avoid the big plays off of screens and off of the short passes, and you got to tackle.
All right. Another thing, if you're a fan of the Washington team like I am, the third downs, the distance. If the Washington football team can stay consistently 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, then they'll have a pretty good chance to possess the ball and keep the Chiefs defense on the field and maybe get a chance to wear them out. If they're not successful, if they're taking sacks on first or second down or not getting any yards with their runs on first and second down, and it's consistently 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, it's going to be a long night because even though the Skins do have a really good offensive line, uh, you're just giving Justin Houston that many times to get your quarterback on the ground, he's going to come up with the sacks. So you don't want to get into a have to pass mode, or 3rd and long where that crowd noise and everything can just cause and wreak havoc. So that'll be a big part of what I'm watching during the game is just kind of the third down and the distance for when Washington has football. Now we'll move into our final game that we're going to preview as Tyler's Dallas Cowboys continue their western swing as they head out to Los Angeles to face the surprising Rams. It's proving that Sean McVay is the quarterback whisperer, as Jared Goff was like a completely different player. The Rams are leading the league, scoring 35 points a game. Their defense is actually their weak link right now, as they're only 26th in points allowed. Giving up a lot of big plays too. San Francisco put up 39 on them last week. Carlos Hyde had some really good runs. Pierre Garcon had almost 150 yards receiving against a really good secondary that the Rams have. But on the strength of Jared Goff, Sammy Watkins, and Todd Gurley, might be the West Coast versions of the triplets. The Rams were able to keep up with the 49ers and outscore them, and they look really good. This was a very fun game, and this might be the type of team because the one thing the Rams have an advantage of is McVay has a lot of knowledge playing against Cowboys. He knows their scheme. He knows Rod Marinelli and kind of what he likes to do. And he actually may have a little bit better. He had a much better running back, much better wide receivers than he's had. Going in with Washington to play Dallas. So as long as they can protect Goff and he doesn't make mistakes, I think the Rams have a really good chance to get one over on the Cowboys.
I am scared to death of this game as a Cowboys fan. This is the type of game, especially coming off a big win over Arizona. This is what you call a quote unquote trap game. This is the game that people penciled in as a win as early as late as probably 3 weeks ago. But if Dallas can't get any pressure on the quarterback, to be some problems. Because right now, Dallas's secondary is the walking wounded. Let's just see some things about Dallas's secondary. You got Anthony Brown, who is just above a rookie who's still learning. He's gonna have to start, and he probably will be the starter the rest of the way at right corner. But you have a hobbling Alandra Scandrick, who he's going to be. I will be surprised the day that you don't see an injury. An injury update on Scandrick. Also, he actually not only got out jumped once, but twice in jump balls for Larry Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald caught 11 balls for well over 100 yards and the touchdown, and his most productive day in, I think, 5 years against the Cowboys secondary. Pierre Garcon has tormented the Cowboys over the years, particularly in Washington. And he's going to have a favorable matchup anywhere he lines up, particularly in the slot.
No, Pierre Garcon doesn't play for the Rams.
Not Garcon, but I'm sorry. Not Garcon. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Garcon, but I meant I'm looking at Watkins. Watkins has actually fared well against Dallas as well. You put him in the slot. You put Todd Gurley put him in some one-on-one. Dallas will give up some rushing yards. C.J. Anderson broke through them, 2 weeks ago. That's for running game. Um, and Gurley actually has proven that he can catch the ball too. So McVay's got all over, and that's what caught me. I'm thinking of McVay. It's a slot receiver very well. He also uh, he also likes to dictate matchups. He'll move receivers around. And right now, Dallas cannot handle when a specific targeted receiver moves around, whether it be on the slot, whether it be on the left side or on the right side. If he can get the ball, then if Dallas pressure doesn't get home, it could be a long day for the Cowboys. Which
Uh,
means the flip side. Why don't the Cowboys run the football and try to control the clock, which they did against Arizona? They survived. Allow the key to the game last week was when the Cowboys allowed just 7 points, despite having the ball for practically 3 plays in the first quarter. Phil Dawson misses a field goal, and Dallas takes the ball and drives down and gets that tying score. Pretty much knew that eventually the Cowboys were going to win, simply because they knew they could drive the ball against the Cardinals, as good as their defense, the secondary is, and of course Dak Prescott made a couple of big plays down the stretch too. So ball control, limit your turnovers, and your pass rush has to get home against Goff.
this is a game where the Rams, I think they're one of the few teams who can kind of emulate the Denver strategy,
Mm-hmm.
where they can load up against your run with just their base defense and stop your deep passing game and not have to have any extra, cornerbacks on the field. So it'll be very interesting to see if this is another game where Zeke struggles, and if he struggles early, if Jason Garrett sticks with him just for the sake of the balance, or if he tries to put it all on Dak's hands and they go air raid like they had to do against Denver, and if he learned anything from that type of game and cuts down on his mistakes that he made against Denver, if he has to go into a game where he has to throw it 40 or 35 times again. So that's kind of the matches I'm looking at, kind of what the Rams do against the Cowboys on first and second down. If Zeke's getting 3, 4, 5 yards pop on first and second down, it's going to be a long day for the Rams, just because the ball control will allow Dallas to get ahead, and then the Rams will have to try to maybe expose Goff a little bit more than they want to, and not be able to have Todd Gurley kind of control the game from their side. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of see who can get up early, and how who controls who possesses the ball the most. Third down is going to be really key in this game to see if both teams can kind of stay on the field to keep the other team off of it. So at this point, again, this is Know the Score. I'm your host, Don Delarente. I'm joined by my co-host, Tyler Ball. We're going to get into our final segment, which is the NBA. The offseason that just keeps on giving gave us 2 more major moves from 2 of the Banana Boat crew, as Carmelo Anthony finally made his exodus from the New York Knicks, and he went out to Oklahoma City to join Paul George and Russell Westbrook. A lot of people are thinking that now this moves Oklahoma City ahead of Houston as the second best team in the West. You've got 3 top-notch scorers. You've got a Swiss Army knife guy in Paul George, who's one of your better wing defenders as well. Russell Westbrook, a proven triple double guy. Going to be interesting to see though how this works with these 3 guys. Who's going to make the sacrifice to make it work? If Russell Westbrook is going to be able to continue to hunt those assists, and if that's going to be a priority of his, like they seem to be last year. But my biggest thing is this shifts all the focus and all the spotlight on Billy Donovan. Because now you've got a coach and you've got to come up, You can't just roll the ball out and say, "Hey, we'll just build everything around Russ. Russ, take us to the promised land." You've actually got to come up with the system that can, incorporate all three of these guys. And hopefully, Roberson's gotten a little bit better at shooting the ball, and Steven Adams has improved enough where he can give you some inside scoring because he's going to give you toughness and rebounding.
Well, I don't think it has to be a entire system that Donovan has to work on. I personally believe that you take advantage of three scorers' strengths. You what you do is you put Melo. You can on put Melo in the post. You get Russ to run. Take every transition basket possible. Obviously, that's going to be the first thing. Then the second thing is in the half court. You get Melo on one side. You get Russ to move the ball, and then you got Paul isolated, and he can go one on one against whoever. So three guys, but you got three guys who can excel on one play. So I don't think it has to be a system. I think you go with the hot hand and you see you know
But
how
I
that carries you.
but I think in this day and age, and especially the way that the defense is a little bit more of an advantage than they've ever had in the NBA with being able to kind of play a quasi zone and the legal defense not as big a part of the game as it is, that having three straight isolation players on one team seems like that would be easy to guard, especially if that's what your motto is going to be coming down the stretch.
Well, they're easy to guard if you rely on shooting jump shots all the time. Somebody's got to go to the rim, and I think the reason why you have three, it's better when you have three instead of two, is because you force teams to pick you force teams to pick a side. Um, when you have three guys, you can your mini zone can't rotate towards one, or you're gonna leave a George. Well, George especially because he's the best 3-point shooter out of the three. Uh, gonna get as many open looks as he wants because teams are going to rotate their coverage towards Melo, and all Russ has to do is, if he goes over to the side where Melo is, then he can throw a reverse diagonal pass and find Paul possibly open for three. Also, uh, one thing you have to consider is rebounding. Uh, you do have Adams in there. Russ is going to try to crash the boards, but my thing that always got me is when Russ goes in and tries to crash the boards, or if the ball carries long, then you may be giving up fast break points the other way. So it has to be a little bit uh, more careful leaking out and not necessarily going after rebounds with reckless abandon because ball goes over his head, team's going the other way. I just think that I think if you center it around Melo and let Russ pick his spots, you'll be fine. Concerned about him shooting because I just want him to concentrate on being the defensive maven that he is, and put him on the shooting whoever's the shooting guard is on the Western Conference, and maybe even if he has to go up against a Steph Curry or a Dame Lillard, uh, as far as defending that sometimes just because of the way the cross matches dictate. So uh, obviously the question is going to be how they do defensively, especially against the Western Conference. Um, it just depends on what Adams and Robertson and their bench can do when it's time to be called upon, because obviously you're going to try to outscore teams.
I think a big thing that, especially all Western Conference teams, but especially if you're going to be a team that wants to think about knocking off the Warriors, is they're going to have to improve their 3-point shooting. That's going to have to make a significant jump. They were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league last year. And so if they can make a significant jump there and, be more consistent from the outside, that'll, what you're talking about as far as playing your ISO ball and people having lanes to drive, that'll definitely make it much easier for those guys to kind of get to the hole. So that's where I think Roberson has got to be willing to take shots and make them this year. Basically he was, they were playing 4-on-5 a lot of times with him in the game, especially who they get knocked off by in the playoffs
Oh,
last year.
Houston. Houston.
Houston, yeah,
They took the
especially in
first game, and then Houston blew them out the
right,
last
especially in
game.
the last 3 games of that Houston series. I mean, it was basically Roberson was trying to get that ball out of his hands so fast, and he had wide open shots, but he had no confidence, and he wasn't gonna try to shoot. So I think if he can improve himself and make himself into 33, 35% 3-point shooter, where if he gets 6, 7 minute game, he hits three on a good night, four on a great night. I think that will elevate them a long way and make it a little bit easier for them to run whatever type of offense they're going to run, and not have so much pressure on those three guys to have to score, create, assist, and shoot threes too. So,
Let's be honest about this too. When you consider Roberson, Russ is not a great 3-point shooter either, and he takes bad shots.
hmm
So I think Russ himself has to pick his spots better, particularly from the perimeter. Uh, Melo somewhere around the mid to high 30s, and of course PG George is actually a solid 3-point shooter as well. So it's not um they're much improved overall, but I do think that it's a little premature to say that they are can take down the Warriors just yet because of the things that we've mentioned.
right.
Um, I think that they're good. I think they're going to be probably the 3 seed, fourth at worst. But yeah, they got some pieces that they have to talk about. Um, as far as how they're going to figure things out. Also, the bench. You got to figure. They're going to have to. Billy Donovan's going to have to figure out how to get the productive minutes that he lost when he traded a bunch of his bench away. Uh, we talking about uh, guys like um, guys like Sabonis, for example, who was who was solid. Um, obviously Victor Oladipo was a starter. You look at the team right now. Uh, you got a guy like a Jeremy Grant who is essentially taking the place of Serge Ibaka, being that aggressive power forward who can guard and block shots and uh, be a pest. You look at the veterans like Nick Collison. Collison's going to have to step it up and be another guy off the bench. Um, he's been the mainstay. Between Alex Abrinas, who played some last year, Bryce Alford, uh, you got a young guy, Daniel Hamilton. One of those guys is going to make the team. And Kyle Singler is another guy who can shoot the ball. So somebody's going to have to make some shots. You're going to have to get some production from the bench. So we'll see. it's going to be interesting to see how this works.
Right. Over in the Eastern Conference, we had the reuniting of the Super Friends, but this time in Cleveland, as Dwayne Wade got bought out by the Chicago Bulls, and he has made his way to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So now, what scares me is all these people are thinking that this is like 2006, 2007 Dwayne Wade. This is Dwayne Wade that they had to do everything in their power to make sure that he can make it to 60 games in the season. Um, I just don't know if Cleveland is playing with fool's gold, having to depend so much on Derrick Rose and now Dwayne Wade to be healthy and be large contributors in the playoffs.
This is when I had to. This reminds me of the old Knicks when they had Derek Harper, who I affectionately called him old guy back in '95. This team is a ragtag bunch out with ragtag pieces around LeBron. Um, I don't know what to think about this deal. I don't. You're asking Derrick Rose to put 16 to give you 16 or 17 a game. You're asking another. You're asking Dwayne Wade to be your. You got to ask him to be your spark off the bench, or he starts ahead of Jr. So Jr. now becomes your sixth man again, which is okay for Jr. Jr. doesn't mind that. At the same time, these guys are just, Wade had such lapses on the defensive end when he was out there. It was just, it was bad. It was really, really meme worthy bad defense because he just doesn't want to come out there and guard people. And you're going to have to guard people even in the Eastern Conference night in and night out. And I'm just not sure if Dwayne wants that responsibility, particularly in the starting lineup. Uh, I think if he comes off the bench, that instant scoring, kind of like Jamal Crawford was doing before he got traded, I think that would be a great role for Wade. But as far as thinking that this is going to be a reuniting of the squad in Miami, no.
Yeah, so I was thinking as well. I was thinking that Wade would probably be the best use of him would be to come off the bench because you can preserve his minutes. And you can kind of, play him in short spurts. You can go out there, play real hard for 5, 7 minutes at a time. Then you can get him out and you hopefully can extend his wear and tear where he can make it through 65, 70 games maybe this season and still be fresh enough that when the playoffs come and he may need to play, 8 to 10 minutes in a stretch that he'll be able to give it to you. It's another, just like you said, a bunch of, when you look at, the guys that they have, just a bunch of kind of ragtag guys with, big reputations, but not maybe big games anymore centered around LeBron. So this will basically be, in LeBron we trust, we can put any four guys around him, no matter their age or health, and still make it out of the Eastern Conference. This is really going to be a test for them this year. I don't think it's going to be that easy. Um, we saw Washington kind of nipping at their heels last year. We saw Boston kind of nipping at their heels last year. They were able to get by, but they didn't have the best regular season. They had to kind of flip a switch once they got into the postseason. So I think this year it just gets that much harder. LeBron's 1 year older. He's didn't have to do any of the Olympic stuff this year, so he finally maybe got a summer to kind of rejuvenate and come back and get refocused and re-energized and have a full summer to do that. But I just don't trust Rose and Wade to be there for him when he's going to need them.
Safety valves. Yeah, that safety valve in Kyrie Irving is gone, and he's in your rival,
Right.
which is nuts. Which is still nuts to me. So basically, you've essentially, uh, we can talk about the improvements that Cleveland made on the defensive end. Yeah, they can stop people. You get straight Jay Crowder's no slaps on the defensive end. Um, I kind of wish they would have gotten Avery Bradley, but Avery was already gone before this trade was made. But come to think about it, man, it's it's not a young roster to say the least.
Right, right. And, I know he is in immaculate shape. He's, one of the best conditioned athletes ever, but I mean, they've gotten so lucky with LeBron not having to miss any significant time with injuries. You just don't know, when that is not going to be the case, because if that does happen, yeah, they're going to have a huge hole to climb out of.
Oh, blow it up.
If anything does happen to LeBron this year. So it's going to be real interesting to see kind of how long it takes them to kind of get their things together. Um, as everybody knows, it's not as easy as it seems playing with LeBron. Um, especially if you're not inside of an offensive system that kind of keeps the ball moving around. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting just to kind of see that chemistry experiment for Cleveland and see if they can, take the first 30 games, 40 games to figure out what they're doing, and then, how it looks the second half after the All-Star game.
Same with OKC. I think folks have to be patient with them because playing with a all world, and I use the term point in air quotes, uh, where you need to be as far as the offense is concerned. Um, that's not etched in stone. So what you need to do is as a guard, you just gotta be patient with Russ. Let Russ know where you like to catch the ball. Simple stuff like that. Communication is going to be important later on the court, especially when you're trying to play a little mini zone, and you're trying to avoid getting beat behind you. So some things that there's going to be some growing pains, I believe, for Cleveland and for OKC as they make the adjustment.
Right, right. Boston too. It's not gonna. I think all of these teams are gonna have a period of time where we look at them like, what's going on with them? But it's not easy integrating all these new pieces. Really high talented pieces into these teams that were kind of established and set and looked to be on a path until this offseason, which was by far the craziest NBA offseason ever. I mean, basically training camp started this week, and that these two guys got moved on the weekend. So, I mean, that's talk about last minute moves. That's definitely it. So at this point, Tyler, I open it up to you for your final thoughts on anything that we didn't cover or any profound statement that you'd like to make after this crazy week in sports.
Well, just to just to bring it all together, um, I'll give credit to Nebias Wilborn. He's always been adamant when he appears on the show that sports tells the truth how America feels about certain topics, and that's been the case this week and literally the past year. Um, I find it interesting that asking whether or not because especially to boycott the NFL because last year, one portion of social media took credit for the boycott for protesting the flag, and um, now black people are asking social media should they boycott to protest the same equalities that the players actually knelt for. Um, you know, should they boycott the NFL? So you got two groups boycotting for different reasons, and they're both affecting the NFL line. Doesn't necessarily care because it's all about growth. and not necessarily about uh, margin or loss. It's about not being able to grow. So I just wonder if players are going to take a stance, or if more people are willing to listen to what players have to say. Um, that I'm looking forward to eventually getting to the World Series.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the baseball playoffs. Baseball playoffs are definitely the best part of baseball. It's a long grind of a season. Just another tip: if you're watching baseball playoffs, don't go to bed before the fifth inning because you will miss the entire game. Game really doesn't start till like the sixth or seventh inning most of the time. So that's when starting pitchers get tired and they start having to go to the bullpen, and then that's when the game really starts, turning out to what it's going to be. Other thought is that Roy Williams, another classy gesture by him. He said that the reason why, if you were remembering when Carolina won the national championship this year, that normally as soon as the thing goes over and the ball goes up in the air, the confetti starts coming down. Well, Roy Williams told the NCAA and the people in the arena to hold the confetti until Gonzaga got off the court, uh, because he didn't want to feel like that they were throwing it in their face, and he kind of had that same feeling against Villanova, where they're trying to go through the line and make the handshakes, and there's all this celebration stuff going, and I guess it was just an empty feeling for him that he didn't want to put on to the Gonzaga players and coaching staff if they happen to win this year. So I just thought that was a very classy gesture by Roy Williams and North Carolina Tar Heels, who also are not going to go to the White House to celebrate with President Trump. It was said that they couldn't find a date. That just may be, Roy Williams taking a bullet for, you know, him making a decision that they're not going to go up there and be involved in his politics. So just a shout out to Roy Williams. And like you said, Tyler, I'm looking forward to the playoffs starting this weekend, next week rather, starting on Tuesday with those wild card games, Tuesday and Wednesday with those wild card games. Best thing about the first round of baseball playoffs to me, daytime baseball, like it should be.
Yep.
So, so for my host, Tyler Ball, I'm Don Delarente, and now you know the score.
Okay.